This is Anna's project. I didn't get the original work file, so I opened up the JPEG file or PNG, whatever it was. So I don't have the layers and stuff. I don't know whether it was done in Illustrator or Photoshop or whatever, but I've kind of like done a kind of hack job where I've cut stuff out of one layer and moved things around a little bit. So I wanted to show you how you could take this design, which I think is actually pretty good. Like you've got all of the elements that I asked for, and there's a kind of order to it. You've got a sense of hierarchy. You've got a title at the top. You'd given me actually more than one version. You gave me two versions of it. On the other version, you had a lighter background, which I think works better because it gives you more contrast. On the other version, I didn't like, there were some details in it, like you'd put a drop shadow on this piece of type. And the reason I didn't like that is I felt like it doesn't fit with the style of the typography. I'm not a big fan of drop shadows anyway. To some extent, that's a personal thing. You know, it's just a matter of taste. But I do think also it just didn't really fit with the style of the type. So this type is based off of hand calligraphy, right? It talks here about Laura Worthington, and she was a graphic designer, and then she sort of developed these typefaces from her practice of doing hand lettering. And they're actually very reminiscent, I think, of so the different weights down here at the bottom. We've got the regular, slant, bold, narrow, wide, upright script, and so on. The energy I get from them, or the feel that I get from these typefaces or this font family, is that it feels very much like sort of mid-century advertising graphics. So 1930s, 40s, 50s, that sort of thing, where they would oftentimes use these script typefaces in a kind of very sort of selly kind of way, like when you're doing regular advertising, just in magazines, newspapers, that type of thing. And so I'd actually put a layer over the top here where it's got like a poster where it's. I found this reference online for a graphic of just the poster folds. So you could make this. I've lowered the opacity on this a little bit, but I don't think it should be too apparent anyway. You might even drop it down more than that. But I felt like, there's something quite retro about it. And I thought by adding that little detail of making it look like it's an old poster might be kind of interesting. But mainly what I was doing is try to organize the information just a little bit more. The other suggestion, and I don't have the layer with the text, so I couldn't change this, but I would suggest trying this text here rather than in capital letters. Try it in upper and lowercase. So over distance, generally speaking, you don't want to capitalize body copy. So areas where we've got to read over distance, you'd be better off using upper and lowercase usually. So I would try that and see what you think. With the bit where it says Laura Worthington, this is purely a suggestion, but because it's such a vertical style typeface, I'm guessing this is the upright script, or maybe it's the narrow actually. I think it's probably the narrow. So with this one, because it's so condensed, you might consider letter spacing this. So just add like maybe 40, 50 points on the tracking. So select Laura Worthington, select over it and track it out a little bit more to give some more space there. This element I couldn't do a lot with because I don't have the text and it's already on a curve and stuff, so I couldn't edit that much, but I might try to have this sort of fit into that space a little bit better. The other thing was, like I said, you had a sort of blurry drop shadow on it, and I didn't really feel like it was in keeping with the style. If you think of this as like old signage or old advertising from like the 40s or 50s, maybe something you'd see, maybe the sort of fonts you might see like an old circus or an old what am I trying to think of, fun fair like type thing where you'd go and go on merry-go-rounds and that type of thing. It's got a kind of fun quality to it. It's quite casual, and so this, what I'm doing is I'm making a kind of offset line. So basically what I've got is three versions of this font. So if you're doing this in Illustrator or something, you could just copy, paste in front, nudge it over, change the color. So this one at the bottom is blue. It's all the same one. If I hold Option, so this is the original layer, then underneath that we've also got, let's see, I'm losing myself here a bit. So there's one here that's got that yellow on it. There's the group above which has got the red on it. There's group below with the blue on it right there. So the blue is actually just a color, but this is because I'm doing it in Photoshop. If I was doing it in Illustrator, I wouldn't do it like that. I would just make a copy of that piece of type, paste it in front, so Command C, Command F, or Control C, Control F. Doesn't matter whether you're in Illustrator, InDesign, Photoshop. Actually, that's not true. With the Command F, Control F, that only really works in Illustrator, to be honest with you. But you could copy it and paste it in front, and then I could nudge it over a little bit, and then I could copy it and paste it in front again and nudge it over again. So each time I'm copying it and pasting, I'll change the color. This second layer here is the same color as the background, so it looks like there's actually a gap there and we're creating a line. If I move these around, it might make a little bit more sense. So if I select that group which has got those bits of type in, I made it into a group because inside the group I've actually separated the star and the word eds and the words market. So those are all on separate layers in each of these groups. I also took out this line and this line. This, to be honest with you, may come down to just a matter of taste. Perhaps you feel like it needs some division between the upper and lower case. But I felt like it could be simpler and it'd be easier to read. It has a nicer flow for me like that. And then I also took out the word typeface. I don't think that was really necessary. And then I also made all of the colors, like you have this color here, this red. This is a different red here. So it's a different red here than it is there. I've kind of unified them all. I took that slightly less saturated, so rather than being this really quite intense orangey red, I used this one which is a little bit duller because it felt more in keeping with that sort of old retro style from that period. And then I applied that to all of these elements throughout here. And also at the bottom, on yours here, this is a little bit difficult to see, but at the bottom here, all of these have a dark line around the outside of them. I think this did as well. I got rid of that everywhere and just had it be flat. Oh, I forgot to do it on upright script. So on upright script it's still like that, but I had just selected over them and filled them with that same color. So those are my suggestions. It's mainly to do with creating a little bit more contrast, so that color in the background, but also just sort of like the organization, deciding what is really necessary and what isn't necessary. Oftentimes, if in doubt, simplify. Like I took some of these dots out because I felt like it was a bit too much. They also noticed these three dots didn't line up with these three dots, which felt a bit awkward to me. These three don't line up with those three. So this dot, these two should really line up exactly. I'm not sure if I actually fixed that, to be honest with you. But it'd be better if they lined up precisely, and then it would feel more correct. So that's my suggestions for this one.